The Senate's about to get the heavy lifting done, aren't they?
We're just about done. We got the education budget passed yesterday. We passed the general fund budget to the House, and that is the only requirements that we really have in the Senate to do. It's our understanding that we're gonna close down the Senate at the end of March. So we've got a few more weeks to go, but we're getting in good shape, and we've gotten things done that we need to get done.
And tell us about the budget. Is there any detail items or line items that you were concerned about, or you really liked, or what?
The budget's good. All right, we've got a higher budget than we've had since 2008 when the recession hit. We don't have the ability to spend more than we bring in, and so revenues have been a concern over the years, and we've done a very good job managing those shortfalls in revenue. We've been very fortunate that we haven't raised taxes, and there have been attempts to raise taxes, and we fought those every time. The one thing I see in the budget, though, is we continue to put K-12 at a disadvantage. And as I've gone through the last 2 years, I've educated my colleagues on what exactly is happening. I will give them facts. I will show them where we're spending money that is coming from the wrong place. I've shown them where K-12 is purchasing things or buying things or paying for things that don't have anything to do with K-12. And that's a problem. We've got $29 million in bond payments that have nothing to do with K-12, but K-12 is paying about 75% of that. And so we're going to continue to work on that. We're going to continue to educate our colleagues, and I think in the near future we'll be able to turn that tide and get that fixed.
Now let's talk about the practicality of that. And I think this may be a civics lesson here, but people wonder why things don't happen a certain way and how unfairness happens. And I would assume that in this situation, people who don't have community colleges or a close tie to education don't think deeply about these matters. But it's big to you, so that's what you're talking about on the educational side, right?
It's important. The thing that I look at is who is paying for what. And when you have K-12 paying for things that are economic development issues, when you have K-12 paying for things for buildings at universities, that's not fair. We have just because that budget is the one that has the most money in it, doesn't mean we should go in there and grab and pull money out to pay for things that are not related to K-12. That's our education budget. That should be spent on education, and that's my goal.
Makes sense. So beyond the budget, what else do we need to know?
I had a lot of good things going on this week. We passed, as we're passing these bills, we're getting to the point of the end of the session. We're trying to get those things settled. We passed a couple things that had to do with sexual assault from people that are in custody or in guardianship with a caretaker. That was very important. We have a law evidently that requires agricultural dogs to be on leashes. So we worked through that and got that straightened out. And we worked through a lot of different little things. Most of it right now is just cleanup. And as we move to the end of the session, that's pretty much what we're going to do is clean things up, make sure everything's in the right place before we get out.
Gotcha. Now turning to the local level, the bill that has to do with the jail food and kind of rearranging how that works here just in Cullman County with Sheriff Gentry, that's made it to your desk. Where are you at with that?
We're looking at it very closely. I think that will pass. I'm looking at a possibility of adding an amendment, and that amendment would simply say that if the state goes to a statewide policy for sheriffs and feeding of the prisoners, that our sheriff would also fall under that policy. And that, to me, makes sense, that we don't have one or two sheriffs that are outside the general bill of feeding prisoners. The problem we've got is we've got one or two sheriffs that don't do it right. And Matt Gentry has done it right all the time as long as he's been in office. I think the same thing with the past sheriffs of Cullman. Unfortunately, because the law is the way it is, there is a question about how strange that law is. And we need to clean that up, and I intend to get it cleaned up. Hopefully we'll help the sheriff and get those things cleaned up for him so he can quit answering the questions of feeding prisoners and get to the real work that he needs to do.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like we're winding down. Your job almost sounds like that of a custodian the last week or two here. Anything else that we should know about coming up that's on the horizon? No,
we've just got to finish the budgets. There's still, we've got to go back and forth with the House and get the details worked out. Those things shouldn't be very difficult. Once the House decides what the changes we've made, make sure they're okay with those, then we'll pass those out. Once those get done, we get toward the end and things get a little hairy because people are concerned about their bills that have not passed. I've been very fortunate this time. I've had 16 bills put in. I think 10 of them have been signed by the governor into law. I've got the 5 or 6 of them that have cleared the Senate and have passed the Senate, and then I've got one that's still in the Senate. So I had a very good year this year passing legislation, and that just requires cooperation. I just work with my colleagues. I educate them on what the bill does, and usually we don't have any trouble at that point.
That's fairly impressive. 16 laws that might get enacted in one session. That's good work by you.
And they're all good pieces of legislation. I don't carry a piece of legislation that's just crazy. I just don't like doing that. I don't carry special interest water. If it's a bill that makes sense to me and it helps my citizens, then that's what I'll do. Let's for example, one of them. If a child is a homeschool child or graduates from a parochial school, they can't get into the police academy. They've got to have a public school degree or they've got to have a GED. That's crazy. We've got a child that was a homeschool child, went into the military, was in the MPs, came back after serving the country, and he couldn't get into the police academy. That's crazy. And so we fixed that. And those are the kind of things that I look at. Things that people come to me and say, we got a problem here. And then when you look at it, sure enough, it is a problem, and we can pass those things. It just make no sense.
Experience pays in these matters, doesn't it? If you didn't know what you're looking at, you wouldn't know it was wrong.
And also it helps to have good communications with your citizens, because they call me and say, what's up with this, or what's the problem with this law, or did you know? And a lot of times we have such a broad spectrum of topics that we don't know, and until somebody brings that to my attention, then we don't know about it. And once it's to my attention, then we can do something about it.
Now I'm going to end with one last thing. We have the Chittlin dinner happening at Arley. You have to go out of town with some family business. I'm going to bring you some chitlins. Would you like that?
Hey, I've been to the Chittlin Festival every year for years. It's a great event in Arley. It supports Meek High School. It does a tremendous. There's like 300, 400, 500 people, and in its heyday, there were thousands of people there. They had people coming from all over the country to that event. You'll see governor candidates there. All the statewide candidates will be there. It's just a great event, and it's just chicken too. So you don't necessarily have to eat chitlins. You can have chicken.
All right. Well, I'm going to take that as a yes. I'll bring you back a box of chitlins then.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Senator.